and we're just going to have a casual conversation. But I'm Marcie Hill, and I'm here with Mitch Mitchell, and it's an honor to be having this conversation with Mitch because he's such a cool dude, and he's a great supporter of me, and he's a tech guy, which is a blessing because I have somebody to try out Blab with me. So thank you for being my victim for this interview, Mitch.
No problem.
And I wanted to talk to you because I know you have, you just published a new book, Leadership Isn't Easy. And I also know that you are going to start speaking more. I know you're already speaking and doing presentations, but I know you're about to take your career to the next level. And that was one of the reasons why, well, in addition to your support, but that was one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you. However, I did have a few questions about your career, your current career, that I want to begin with, if that's okay with you.
I'm with you today.
Okay, so allow me to be a little tacky. I have my little piece of paper here. So I was doing a little research, and you're an independent revenue cycle consultant. And while I got it, when I was reading it, I don't get it. So can you explain that to us, please?
Sure. Well, I'm a healthcare finance consultant, and it's called revenue cycle. Revenue cycle is the process of, from the time that you're registered into the hospital all the way through to collections. If people need to be, send people to collections, it's the charge capture process. So it's really that entire thing. It, is the hospital going to survive or not? Really all depends on the revenue cycle. So it's capturing charges, it's capturing information, it's getting it out there to the insurance companies properly so that they will pay, making sure everything is coded properly. And when it's not paid, and finding out why they didn't pay it, investigating that, understanding, how to fix those types of things. So there's a whole lot involved in it. And I just happen to be pretty good at it.
And how long have you been doing it?
Well, on my own for 14 years, but I started in healthcare in this area in 1983. You weren't even born then, I'm betting. So
I'm older than I look, but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 32 years now. So yeah, I've been in 32 years. I know I look younger too. So here we go.
Okay, cool. So it works. That's why we connected.
Yes.
And then how did you get into leadership? Because I know that's one, you said that's your other area of consulting. And it seems like it's two different, I won't say extremes, but they're two different audiences, so to speak. Maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure, but just my understanding.
Well, you know what you find out is that no matter what career you're in, if you're paying attention to things around you, you will start to recognize some stuff. And one of the things that I recognized in healthcare is that it's very bad at leadership. And, and I'll explain this. In a hospital, it's not necessarily the same way in other businesses. In a hospital, they usually promote someone who turns out to be the best tech at something. So if you work in radiology, you're the best radiology tech, you get promoted to the director. If you're in nursing, you get promoted to the director of nursing. If you're in finance, everyone gets promoted. Obviously, you got to have a certain background, whatever, but you get promoted based on what you do. Truth is, most people don't have any leadership skills. A lot of folks, when I wrote my first book back in 2001, 2002, I researched at the time, and you start to find out that a lot of people have never led anything before they've been given a leadership position. They weren't the team captain on any organized sport. They weren't the team captain when you used to go outside and pick teams for basketball. They never led a committee or anything. They never led anything. Maybe they've been a parent, but that's not quite the same thing because you're dealing with children. You can tell a child, stop that, drop that, put that down. You can't go around telling adults that and think that's
right.
So, you risk getting smacked back. So, I started to notice this pretty early when I was in healthcare, actually even before healthcare. You just start to notice these types of things. And I always knew that I was pretty good at leadership. My dad was a master sergeant, and he led in a way where he got a lot more respect not only from the people who reported to them, but the people he supposedly reported to. And so you learn some things. So really, the leadership thing came about to crystallize it when the hospital system I was working for merged with a larger hospital system, and they decided to bring in a leadership trainer, and they brought this guy in, and he was pretty bad at it, and he just was, and he actually threw me out of a class. And
why?
Yeah, oh yeah, I kept telling everyone he didn't like me, and everyone kept saying, "Don't take it personal." He threw me out of a class. At the end of the class, he asked them how they felt about him throwing me out, and they let him have it.
Really?
And they let him have it to the extent that they stopped the leadership training for a while. And then he called me up, and I wasn't going to talk to him, but they said, no, talk to the guy, give him a chance. So we talked for about 90 minutes. I told him about himself or whatever, and he says, hey, you know this pretty well. You could teach this. That's where it came from.
Okay, I'm just tweeting. I'm listening.
No,
I'm trying to tweet so they give me the options. Okay.
Good. While you're tweeting, I'll drink something.
Okay, so this is kind of cool. And thank you for being my first blab. Okay. All right. So that was the independent review cycle consultant. And how many, is that a common position, or is this more like a more specialized? Because that's the first time I've ever heard that, because all of your information just says healthcare, finance. What's the other word you use?
Healthcare, finance, revenue cycle. Here's one of the things is that there's only one of every one of these at a hospital.
Okay.
And not always to the degree of, I hate to say my skill, I'll just say my background.
Okay.
For instance, the reason that I learned all the stuff that I did is because I actually, for a couple of years between working in the hospitals, I was a regional director for a physician billing company. So I got to learn about some of the background things that it turns out traditional billing in hospital never has to learn. They should learn it, but they don't. And so I got a little extra perspective, which helped me, to get bigger. But it's one of those areas where, for the most part, it's one person at every hospital who has a skill, which makes it hard. If you lose a position or you want to go somewhere else, you have to wait till someone is fired to get it. So it's not easy. And you also have different degrees. For instance, if you're in a small town area, the person in that position just might not have all the skills needed for it. It's sometimes hard to get someone who has had that position somewhere else to go to a small town, in a difficult location. So sometimes you get someone in there who just moved up the ladder. So you can only do what you can do. That's another reason why consulting can be good. You can get someone like me who, it may seem kind of expensive sometimes, but the truth of the matter is they make a ton of money with me than without me. My fee is easy to, for anyone to take care of.
I wouldn't say that you could be expensive. Just say you're worth your weight in gold.
Well, I'm just being nice because we're talking here.
If you have the background and the experience that they need, you're worth it. And then you said you actually, I'm sorry, I have my paper here.
Goodness,
how much did you recover for that one company? Millions of dollars?
That one hospital? You mean that $730 million that I found?
That's almost $1 billion.
$730 million in 1 year. Yes.
So did you, so I'm being nosy, did you at least earn 10% of this?
No. I went in, that was my best financial year ever, personally.
And that was just one hospital?
Yeah, it was just one hospital. They had been in distress anyway. And, going in, who knew they were in that kind of distress? So, no. In essence, I was a subcontract to a subcontract. So I got, my fee. Oh, my goodness. If I could have just got 0.5%,
right.
I'd have been a millionaire. I would have been a millionaire. And the thing is, that was revenue. the cash was almost 200 million because of how much revenue I found them. So
wow.
even if I could have got 0.5 of that, I wouldn't have been a millionaire, but I'd have, I'd have been able to talk
close to it.
Oh, I'd have talked some serious smack with
So how do you find these types of opportunities? Do you contact the hospitals directly, or do they find you? How does that work?
Well, my own marketing isn't necessarily so good. I'm not good at that. Hospitals are, it's a kind of a closed system. It's hard to get to CFOs. Most CFOs aren't online. They're not, you can't market to them that way. You're not going to call up the CFO and just get them to answer the phone. They've got a secretary out there who's going to block everything you try to do. So most of the time, this is how come I try to make sure my name is out there, because it's other folks who find out about these things. They know about me, and then they'll contact me, say, hey, we've got such and such, here. Is this something you might be interested in? But It sometimes can take a while. So one of the things you learn when you're in business, this is for everyone who's in business, for yourself, you learn to put away a reserve of the money that comes in so that you can sustain yourself while you're back out there marketing yourself, while you're waiting for that next big thing to happen.
I understand. And even if you aren't independent, you still need to do it, because you just never know when somebody's going to let you go these days.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to ask a question to our people.
Okay. Yeah, I know this is unique kind of thing. I've only been on one other, and it was a test thing run by Eileen Smith. So I gave Eileen.
Okay. Did you have fun doing it?
Yeah.
She's so cool.
Yes, she is. She knows all her stuff.
Okay, now let's talk about I'm interested in how do you. Okay, so with your leadership experience, have you ever worked in HR, or you just saw the opportunity and then move forward from there?
Well, I saw an opportunity, but I'm gonna bust up a misconception here. HR is not about leadership. It's not. It's just another department within a business. If you want leadership training, HR is not going to give it to you. It's just not going to happen. They're going to contract out for someone else to come in and do leadership training. By the way, here I am. But that's what they're going to do. It's one of those kind of things where, the misconception about HR is that they're always there for the employees to try to do, what's best for them. They're there, their listening ear. Truth of the matter is, they got to balance an act, because they're employees like everybody else. They have to report up to the person who leads them, just like everyone else does. So just because you go to HR and you talk, about something with them that you think is confidential does not mean that's not going to get out somewhere, unless they specifically tell you that. So like I said, what happens is that I would get contacted, if it happens, by an HR company to come in and talk about leadership or diversity or harassment or anything that's kind of employee related. I've done those seminars. And I've done, communications, help set that up, customer service.
Okay.
So, that's the kind of thing that you ever do,
Because I actually, I used to work in HR. I had to divorce human resources. It didn't allow for a lot of creativity. And then you get tired of, okay, like you said, we are in the middle because we're supposed to advocate for the employee, but then we also have to look out for management. Mm-hmm. And we're I don't want to say liaison, but we're the buffer between we're the buffer department. And quite frankly, I got tired of babysitting. I'm like, if I'm a babysitter, I might as well just go, find some kids. But that's why I left HR. But I probably should not have been in HR anyway. But I understand.
Tough.
Huh?
It can be a tough job. Because you're not necessarily sure who you're beholden to. And, you've got one side that really thinks you're there for them, and you got the other side that thinks you're there for them. And in today's world, you also have to deal with HIPAA, which hospitals mainly deal with. But the truth of the matter is, HIPAA impacts every single business. That's privacy. And if you're giving out the wrong information to the wrong people, because
that's a lawsuit.
Oh, that's a lawsuit. Yes.
So, well, how long have you been in leadership? As long as you've been in, as a revenue cycle, as a
Well,
revenue cycle consultant, or no, it's not. That's not how I wanted to ask that question.
that's okay. Let me answer it for you the way you wanted to go.
Are you? Look, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Like I said, I started in hospitals in 1983. I started out as what they call an inpatient biller.
Okay.
And so, everyone knows what an inpatient is. That means you're in the hospital for days on end. And it was a different life back then. I was in that position basically for 7 or 8 months. And then I got promoted to my first position, which is assistant supervisor. And I was an assistant supervisor for 3.5 years. It was still a leadership position. And I was over outpatient billing and emergency room admissions. And one of the funny things is I learned all the jobs that every other department did except for scanning. I don't know how I learned it, but I knew how to do every other job in the area. And
Right.
occasionally I did. If there was this like a big downfall, they would ask me to go help out, and I did. So I've always been in leadership, after that. Like I said, I was a regional director for a physician billing company. I was business office manager of a hospital, another hospital in Central New York area. I was called director of patient accounting at another place. And as an independent, I've gone in sometimes as just the consultant and sometimes as an interim director at different places. So I've always kind of done that. And I like I said, I like to think I was good at it. And for about 1.5 years, when I was still employed, I was on a committee that helped to put together a leadership training program for new supervisors. So, like I said, you get to do some of these things. And like I said, the leadership guy said, this guy seems to know something. Worked out well for me.
Okay. And what prompted you to write your first book, Embrace the Lead?
Well, the thing is, when I went into business for myself, it was 2001, June 2001. And I said, you know what? I need to have a product. I need to have something out there that shows that I know what I'm talking about. And so I started writing the book in probably July. That's when I started. I started out with an outline, and I knew how I wanted to, put everything together. And then September 11th, 2001 came. And I didn't touch the book for about 2.5 months. It was just one of those kind of things that just threw everything off. And then what happened in November 2001 is my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And all of a sudden my mind says, okay, you got to get back to this book because you'd like your dad to read some of the book. And that's what got me, getting back into it. But I always wanted to, write the book. I knew that it would help me to show, at least I knew something about what I was talking about. If I wanted to extend it into other things, I could go back and say, hey, look, I got a book. Y'all can't read that because of the lighting, but there it is. There it is. I know it's backwards. I can't help that either. But at least it gave me a product. It gave me, an end. And my dad got to read about 25% of it until he got too ill to be able to read. So, that was kind of good too.
Well, that's great. And have you been doing workshops from your book?
I did early on. I mean, I finished the book in 2002, and I did get some speaking engagement from it. I did get to do a couple of workshops. And it was basically because of that book and actually healthcare that I actually got to travel to some places I probably never would have if I hadn't written it. So,
and where are some of those places?
Well, I went to Grand Island, Nebraska, and I went to Ogunquit, Maine, which no one has heard of, but you've heard of Kennebunkport because that's where the Bushes hang out, and it's about 5 or 6 miles away from there.
Okay.
So, I spoke in Virginia, and, New York, Jersey, whatever. So I've spoken, pretty much through New England, but Nebraska was kind of neat. And like I said, Virginia was something else entirely. So, that's pretty much it.
Okay. And you have a second book on leadership.
Yes. And I don't have.
What prompted you to write Leadership Is or Isn't Easy?
Well, the thing is that I left town for about 18 months. I was consulting in Memphis, Tennessee for about 18 months. And just before I left, or around the time I left, I decided to stop writing my newsletter. I used to write a leadership newsletter. I wrote that for 10 years. And I said, you know, I should compile some of the articles that I wrote into a book. And that's really where it came from. I was thinking of Mike Royko. I'm not sure if you know who that is. He used to write for the Chicago Sun-Times.
I am familiar with Mr. Royko.
Okay, he was my dad's favorite columnist. And he put out a couple of books, or maybe 2 or 3, and they were all based on articles that he had written for the Chicago Sun-Times.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, okay, I'm Mike Royko. And I certainly had enough material. So I decided I was going to put this book together. And that's, you know, that was where that came from. It still took me longer to write that one than it took me to write my first one. I wrote the first one from scratch.
Okay, so that is one of the lessons we can learn from you during this conversation. For anyone who's listening, if you're a writer, or even if you're not a writer and you have a series of articles or anything that you have written, you can just compile them now and make them a book, because self-publishing is easy these days. And then you also have electronic publishing. So that's just a lesson I wanted to share with anyone who's watching us.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I didn't go the full route. For instance, I have not put it on Amazon. You know, I haven't put it in that way. I created it as an ebook, basically a PDF. I sell it off of there. Reason being is because, well, you know, I'm only selling it for $7.95 and I get all the profit. I don't have to give any to Amazon. I have I have publisher numbers, so I could do that. But, you know, I always thought that, you know, it's nice to have readers, but it's also nice to be able to say, yes, you know, I made actually $6.95. Not, hey, I made 95 cents because, you know, they sold my book for 99 cents today. I don't really know exactly how that works. But you know what I mean? I understand. I wanted to keep control of my own stuff.
That's what I want to do with, I'm actually launching another book, The 7 Practices of Highly Underpaid Freelance Writers.
Ah.
So that I'm launching that tomorrow. I have not been promoting it.
I know. I know about that. Are you kidding? I wrote the review for your other book. You know, that's what I do.
Okay. So, yeah, that's coming out tomorrow. But then I had I got this thing with workbooks. I guess I'm workbook obsessed. So I have a workbook that's coming with that one, but it'll only be available for, you can only purchase it from Marcie Writes.
There you go.
So that's for that one. But see, the Underpaid Freelance Writers, that's going to be the book that takes me over the top, because there's so many of us who are writing. People give excellent information. There are so many great writers that are highly underpaid. And I was one, probably still am, you know, can still relate. But I just figure that if I could help my fellow scribes, that would, I mean, that boosts my self-esteem. It's not even about the profits, but it's certain things that I've gone through and that other writers can relate to. And speaking of writing, you're obsessed with content, because you said you wrote over 5,000 articles or something. And
5,000, around 4,500. But yes, I've written a lot.
And what prompts you to write? Because somebody would love to know, like anybody who's stuck with Blogger's Block, where do all the ideas come from? What inspires you? And what are some of your topics? Well, we know leadership is one.
Yeah, leadership is one. Well, you know, okay, we'll just get this out there. I have 5 blogs, but all blogs aren't equal, of course. So I have one that's called Mitch's blog, and that's my business blog. That's my true business blog, where I talk about leadership and diversity, you know, all that stuff I mentioned earlier. And I also talk about motivation. Then I have the blog that you met me through, which is I'm Just Sharing. And I'm Just Sharing is really more of my social media blog, where I talk about, you know, obviously blogging and social media. I talk about different things that happen online, you know, affiliate programs and such. I also talk about, you know, I think I mentioned writing, but I also do motivation on that blog.
Right.
Because we just can't get enough motivation. But the motivation is different, because the motivation on that one is usually blogging motivation or writing motivation, you know, because like you said, you know, writers are undervalued. I don't know if you saw my latest post on there that says I'm a professional. And I talked about, the process of writing, where there are people who want to pay you nothing, or, a penny a word or less than a penny a word to write these poems. And we can't live off of that. You just can't. And my thought is, okay, remember when you were in high school, how did you like writing your papers? If you were good at it, then you should be a writer. If you weren't good at it, pay the writers more money.
Right.
It is to it. You know how difficult it is because you didn't like writing papers. I love writing papers, although from 11th grade through college, I got a B on every single paper. Oh, no, that's not quite it. I got an A on one paper. But every other paper, I always got a B.
Okay. But your inspiration, share. What are you doing when all of these ideas come forward? I mean, I know you have the 5 blogs, but even with 5 blogs, you still need at least, well, I don't know how often you post on all of your sites, but you still need inspiration to keep going. Where does it come from? And then you post on LinkedIn, and then you've written for other properties.
Yeah, I write for my consultants group blog, and I write for my accountant. I write her blog, and I've written for other blogs. Well, the thing is that you have to at least have some kind of idea or some kind of joy in some of the things that you write about in order to be consistent. I mean, let's face the fact here. Social media, there's tons of stuff that comes out all the time. There's ideas. There's stuff you see. Kind of like I said what I did with leadership. I saw a lot of bad leadership. And so I can write about it all the time because I can pull all these different stories out of it. And I can do the same thing with social media. I can do the same thing with blogging because I visit tons of blogs. Right. I do the same thing with writing because I write a bunch of stuff. I can do that. I have a healthcare blog, so I can do it about that because that's an area I know. And I can talk about it for patients as well as for people who are in healthcare. And I add health stuff to that one because, I know a little bit about it. I don't always follow it all, but I know some of the stuff. Sometimes you see some really weird stuff. And you say, oh, my God, I got to write about that. I have a finance blog because I'm interested in ways to help people save money. I don't talk about coupons as often, but I do that. I'm interested in figuring out how people invest and, making recommendations. Should you invest in this? Should you refinance your home? I'm interested in stuff like that. So, I think that if you're a writer and you're writing for yourself, if you can't come up with ideas on what to write about, don't even start. If you're writing for someone else, well, you know what their topic is. They got this thing called the internet. We can research stuff there. Right. They got this thing called libraries. They got books. You go research stuff there if you can't find what you want online. And that's the part about wanting to get paid for what you're doing. Years ago, this guy wanted me to write a bunch of articles on turkey hunting in different states. And I'm like, really? What? Turkey hunting? And he was going to pay me okay at the time. So I said, okay, sure. I couldn't find anything online. So I went to the library, found all this material. There were like 4 or 5 books on turkey hunting. Who would have ever thought? I certainly never. Right. But I found these books on turkey hunting. So I wrote the articles and he paid me for it. And there you go.
That's sweet.
I wrote a wedding blog for 2.5 years.
Why? What's the story behind the wedding blog?
They paid me. A guy who he basically owned a real estate website, but he also was one of those people who knew how to get contracts to write other things. And then he would find the people who could do it. So he asked me, how would you like to write for this company's wedding blog? They make wedding dresses. So a lot of it, we went around that, but it's anything wedding related. And once he told me that, then I was good. Because I did write about wedding dresses because I think, some of those designs are just absolutely stunning. My wife was a designer. She made her wedding dress, and she's made wedding dresses for some other people. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you look at my post on I'm Just Sharing, my latest one about being a professional, you'll see her in the wedding dress that she made. And I'm in that picture too. So I couldn't help being in the picture with her, but she made that wedding dress. So that was something that I was interested in and writing about it. And I wrote about the different designers and I wrote about the different types of wedding dresses and I wrote about history of it, but then I could write about other things. like different wedding venues and, you know, people getting married in some of the weirdest places. I could write about receptions. I could write about, you know, finding the right photographer, the right music. I used to sing at weddings. So, you know, as long as you don't make it too finite a niche, the one I always pick that I can't write on or never, you know, I just told them no, forensic loan analysis. I said, no, I can't write that one.
What's that?
Forensic loan. Okay, during the housing problems in California in 2009 to like 2012, what was happening were a lot of people were going underwater with their homes. So what they did is they would take it to these lawyers who called themselves forensic loan analysis lawyers, who would go through line by line through the contract. And if they found one thing that was wrong, then they would sue and get out of the contract so that they couldn't go to bankruptcy or nothing. The contract was totally null and void. And this became a big business. So they would pay these guys like $500 to go find something.
Wow.
And so they wanted to have a blog. And I wrote 2 articles, and then I said, I don't know what to write about you guys anymore. Nope, can't do it.
Okay. There's a topic for everything. Do you know if their blog is still up and running?
Yeah, probably not. Just like everything else, probably not.
Okay. So I wanted to, so we discussed this consulting, your leadership, your books, and then your final topic, because we are wrapping up, your speaking. You're about to make a big splash in speaking, and let us know. You're supposed to go along with me with this one, Mitch.
Oh,
you're
okay.
Say, you're everywhere. You're going to become an international speaker. But what are some of your topics?
Well, okay. I thought we
know leadership.
We'll start with the revenue cycle. Let's start with that.
Okay.
A lot of medical folks, you know, one of the surprising things is that when I talk about revenue cycle to people who aren't in healthcare, they don't understand it. And it turns out that when I talk to some people in healthcare, they don't understand it. They should, but they don't. And, you know, I mean, that's just how it is. For, you know, I'll give you a quick example. Chief financial officers, you know, a lot of them who come in were auditors at insurance companies or maybe accounting firms. Okay. So let's look at who they're over. They're over basically what they call the patient accounting side, which is registration, which is billing, which is collections. They've never registered a single patient. They've never sent out a single bill. They've never tried to collect any money from anybody. So they don't know any of that. They're over medical records. They've never coded a medical record in their lives. They probably don't know what a diagnosis code looks like.
Right.
They're over IT. They don't know anything about IT. They may not necessarily know a lot about their PC. So they don't know anything about that. They're over purchasing. Well, you know, these guys don't know the difference between a pacemaker or COPD. I mean, they just don't know what any of this stuff is. They don't know how it's supposed to be priced. They may say, hey, how come everything costs so much? Which is one of the things that I go look at. But they don't know what that is. But they're over finance, which is accounts payable. That area they understand, because they understand that they need, you know, how much money they need to pay out. They understand budgeting, but they don't understand all the rest of it. So that's, you know, sometimes one of the things that you're up against. It's, you know, it's not necessarily their fault because it's not anything that they teach anywhere. It's one of those few things in healthcare that you can only learn by doing. You can't go to school for it. There are classes to go learn medical billing, but it's physician medical billing. It's never hospital. So anyway, I can talk on that. Obviously, I can talk on leadership. I've talked on leadership. I've talked on diversity, which turns out sometimes to be kind of rough because some folks just aren't ready for the concepts. Right,
and you might be the only diverse person in the room teaching diversity, so that's challenging.
That one, when you're talking about sexual harassment, you go in thinking, okay, these folks are going to know what this is, and then they don't, and some of the questions they ask you are really astounding. But I can talk on that. I've talked about communications. I've talked about stress management. Locally, I've talked about blogging. I was part of a big blogging conference here where I talked on that. I talked about social media. I've given some of my own presentations on that. And motivation. I talk about that. The positivity thing. I do subscribe to the thing about the law of attraction, which basically says, if you can put out a positive vibe, you get positive things back. I don't necessarily believe in the thing that if I say I want a red cup and I just think about it all day long and all night long and I dream about it, that I'm getting a red cup. I mean, I'm going to have to go buy a red cup, most probably. But by being positive about it, it may say, you know what, I'll start saving some money up so that I can get a red cup. I mean, that's just being realistic. But, I talk about that. I put out, my little motivational quotes on Twitter, here and there, and sometimes on Facebook, because I think that we all want to feel better. And if I can, find ways to help people feel better, then I feel better.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, because you've made me feel better by being my victim and also being a supporter. So I really appreciate you. And before we close, because I know you have to go, where can people find your book, your sites, and anything else you'd like to promote? How can they hire you for your for consulting services and for speaking?
Well, actually, one of the things, I don't know where you can put it. I don't know if you can put that information anywhere, and then it'll stay. So we'll just say this. You can find me at ttmitchellconsulting.com. That's for the business stuff. And that will take you both to my website where you'll see what I do, but then there'll be a link there for my blog and for my products.
Okay.
That's the blog. Then we have I'mJustSharing.com, which is pretty much my go-to blog. That, like I said, that's where I met Marcie and a lot of other people, and it's my most popular blog. And from there, the links to all my other blogs are over in the blog roll on the side, as well as other people that I help promote here and there.
Okay, and your books can be found on TT Mitchell.
Yep, there's a product link. So there's my books. There's I did a seminar series. So there's an audio files there. I did a leadership training manual. I did an evaluation. Like if you're going to hire people, I created an evaluation process, so you can do that as well. I have a book on social media marketing. So I have a book on that. And I have another e-course that I did. It was, I'm saying e-course, I mean webinar about social media that is out there, that if people want to buy that. It's a little dated, but still all the information in it is valid.
And what about your LinkedIn profile?
Oh, well, LinkedIn, actually, I don't know the link to that. Just, you know what, go to LinkedIn, look up Mitch Mitchell. Look for my face. This is my face. I've got, 75, 76 articles that are published on LinkedIn now. So, you'll find me. Trust me. I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find a lot of places.
Okay. And then, of course, we can find you on Twitter at Mitch_M.
Yes.
And do you have anything else you want to promote before we end our conversation?
No. You know what? Here's the thing. Oh, well, I have 2 YouTube channels. My business YouTube channel is youtube.com/TT Mitchell Consulting. And then my other YouTube channel, where I go off and sometimes I just rant about stuff, but I'll also talk about social media, is youtube.com/chill3express3. So yes, there's my YouTube channels. I almost forgot about those.
Okay, and I don't have any more questions, but I do want to thank you for being patient with me and my technical difficulties today, and then for taking the time to be my first, I think the blabber. That's what I saw today after I said I was going to have a blab conversation. So thanks for being my first personal blab.
Yeah, I'm never calling myself that. No, I'll just say interview and we'll go on with that.
Okay, thank you so much, Mitch, and you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come.
All right, take care.
Yep.